Last month, I spent $12 on something that genuinely made me feel like a millionaire. It wasn't designer clothes or fancy tech. It was something so ordinary you probably have it in your home right now. In today's video, I'm breaking down the psychology behind those small purchases that deliver massive emotional returns. You're about to discover why your $4 coffee might actually be worth every penny, and how smart spenders strategically create feelings of wealth without breaking the bank. The psychology behind why cheap purchases can feel expensive. Have you ever noticed how sometimes a $5 purchase can make you feel richer than something that costs $500? There's actually a fascinating psychological reason for this, and understanding it might completely change how you think about spending your money. Our brains don't process value and satisfaction based purely on price tags. When you buy something, your brain isn't just calculating dollars and cents. It's running complex emotional equations involving your personal history, social context, and even childhood memories. This creates a fascinating disconnect where expensive purchases can sometimes leave us feeling strangely empty, while affordable little luxuries trigger genuine feelings of abundance. Science has a name for why expensive things often fail to deliver lasting happiness: hedonic adaptation. It's our brain's tendency to quickly return to a baseline level of happiness after changes in our circumstances. That shiny new phone feels amazing for a week or two, but soon it's just your phone. That luxury purchase you saved for months to buy. The emotional high fades surprisingly quickly. But here's where it gets interesting. Small, affordable pleasures can sometimes bypass this adaptation mechanism completely. Why? Because they're not just products, they're emotional experiences with multiple layers of meaning. Think about what happens when you break a pattern of restriction. If you've been diligently bringing lunch from home for weeks, that $12 restaurant meal with coworkers feels extraordinarily indulgent. It's not just food, it's a reward, a social connection, and a break from routine all wrapped into one relatively affordable package. The connection to childhood memories creates an even more powerful effect. Our viewer community shared dozens of examples of this. Buying name-brand cereal as adults gives many people an almost irrational feeling of wealth precisely because it was off-limits during childhood. One viewer described how purchasing the fancy paper towels her mother always considered too expensive creates a stronger feeling of financial success than her actual career achievements. The neuroscience behind this is particularly fascinating. Your brain's reward system releases dopamine, the feel-good neurotransmitter associated with pleasure and motivation, in response to emotionally meaningful experiences. And here's the surprising part. Research shows that small purchases with deep emotional significance can trigger more dopamine release than objectively more valuable items with less emotional resonance. This is why that $4 specialty coffee might actually be worth every penny. Your brain isn't just registering coffee. It's processing a momentary escape, a small reward, a daily ritual that signals I deserve quality, and possibly even the aroma that reminds me of weekend mornings at my grandparents' house. That's a lot of psychological value packed into a relatively inexpensive cup. Behavioral economists call this experienced utility, the actual satisfaction we derive from consuming something, as opposed to decision utility, which is what we predict we'll feel when making the purchase. And we're surprisingly bad at predicting which purchases will deliver the highest experienced utility. The context of consumption matters enormously too. A $15 bottle of wine shared with close friends on a special occasion will likely create more lasting happiness than a $50 bottle consumed alone while scrolling through social media. The wine itself is just one part of a complex emotional experience. This explains why strategic small purchases can be such powerful tools for feeling wealthy. The key is identifying which affordable items trigger those specific wealth feelings for you personally. For some, it's high-quality hand soap in the bathroom. For others, it's fresh flowers on the kitchen table or premium ice cream in the freezer. What's particularly powerful about these small luxury purchases is that they can function as wealth anchors throughout your day. Tiny but consistent reminders that you can afford to treat yourself well. Unlike large purchases that quickly fade into the background of your life, these small pleasures get renewed attention each time you use them. There's also something particularly potent about purchases that engage multiple senses. That scented candle isn't just decoration. It creates an instant atmosphere through smell, sight, and even the small ritual of lighting it. This multisensory experience creates a more immersive feeling of luxury than many more expensive purchases that engage fewer senses. The timing of consumption creates another interesting psychological effect. Small luxuries consumed during transition periods, like your morning coffee or evening tea ritual, have outsized emotional impact because they help delineate different parts of your day. They become not just products, but markers of time that help structure your life experience. Social signaling matters too, though perhaps not in the way you might think. While we often assume luxury purchases are about impressing others, research suggests that many small wealth-feeling purchases are actually about how they make us feel about ourselves. That leather-bound notebook isn't primarily to impress colleagues. It's about how it makes you feel when you use it. This helps explain why the most satisfying small luxuries often align with your personal values and identity. If you value creativity, art supplies might deliver more happiness per dollar than anything else. If you pride yourself on being a great host, quality serving dishes might create an outsized feeling of abundance. Morning rituals, the $4 coffee that feels like a luxury retreat. Those first 15 minutes of your day might determine your entire wealth mindset more than any other purchase you make. While we've explored how our values shape our experiences of luxury, there's something almost magical about morning rituals that can transform an ordinary day into something that feels genuinely abundant and special. Think about it. What's the first thing you do when you wake up? For millions of people, it's brewing a cup of coffee or steeping some tea. But this simple act goes far beyond just caffeine intake. It's actually a powerful psychological ritual that sets the tone for everything that follows. Morning rituals create a unique mental space where even affordable pleasures can deliver satisfaction comparable to much more expensive experiences. That cup of coffee that costs just a few dollars? When it's part of a mindful morning ritual, it can genuinely compete with luxury experiences costing hundreds more. The science behind this is fascinating. Harvard Business School researchers discovered something remarkable. Ritualized consumption experiences provide significantly greater satisfaction than random ones, even when the product itself is identical. Let me explain what that means. The same exact coffee tastes better and provides more emotional value when it's consumed as part of a consistent, intentional morning practice. This explains why so many of us are willing to spend $4 on a barista-made coffee when we could make something at home for cents. It's not just the coffee, it's the entire experience. Walking into your favorite shop where the barista knows your order, the familiar sounds and smells, the brief moment of connection. These elements create a rich emotional experience that far exceeds the actual cost. What's particularly interesting is how personalizing just one element of this ritual can transform the entire experience. I've heard from viewers who invested in a beautiful mug they love, upgraded to slightly better coffee beans, or simply created a dedicated space in their home for enjoying their morning beverage. These minor adjustments created disproportionate feelings of luxury and abundance. One viewer shared, "I bought a $30 electric milk frother, and now my morning coffee feels like something from a 5-star hotel. That little bit of foam completely transforms my day. I feel like I'm starting with something special instead of just functional caffeine." Another told me, "I splurged on a pottery mug from a local artist. It cost $25, which felt like a lot for a mug, but I use it every single morning. The weight of it in my hands, knowing it was handcrafted, it makes my entire morning feel intentional and premium." The psychological power of these rituals comes from their consistency. Your brain actually begins anticipating the pleasure before it happens. Scientists have found that this anticipation phase triggers the same reward centers in your brain as the actual experience. In essence, you get to enjoy your morning ritual twice. Once while looking forward to it, and again while experiencing it. This creates what psychologists refer to as a pleasure anchor in your day, a reliable source of satisfaction that signals to your brain, "I can afford to treat myself well." These anchors serve as powerful psychological reminders that you're worthy of care and small luxuries, regardless of your overall financial situation. The timing of morning rituals also contributes to their outsized impact. Your brain is particularly receptive in those first moments after waking, making experiences during this transition period more emotionally significant and memorable. That's why upgrading your morning ritual creates such powerful feelings of abundance. It capitalizes on a time when your brain is especially receptive to pleasure and meaning. What's remarkable is how this effect persists even during financially challenging times. When inflation hits grocery prices and many people feel pressure to cut back, these small morning luxuries often provide the greatest psychological value per dollar spent. Eliminating them might save money, but the emotional cost can be surprisingly high. One particularly effective strategy is to create layers of sensory engagement in your morning ritual. Using a special cup that feels good in your hands, savoring the aroma before taking your first sip, or enjoying your beverage in a peaceful corner of your home. These sensory dimensions create a more immersive experience that amplifies the feelings of luxury and abundance. The power of these rituals becomes even stronger when they align with your personal identity. If you value craftsmanship, using a handmade mug connects your morning practice to deeper values. If environmental sustainability matters to you, drinking fair trade coffee in a reusable container creates alignment between your actions and beliefs, generating what psychologists call value congruence, a powerful source of satisfaction. I've noticed that people who maintain these morning rituals often report feeling more grounded and centered throughout their day. The ritual becomes a form of self-care that extends its benefits well beyond those first 15 minutes. One viewer described it as setting the tone for how I'll treat myself all day, with a little more care and intention. What's perhaps most surprising is how these ritualized experiences can actually help form healthier relationships with spending and consumption overall. By identifying specific, meaningful sources of daily pleasure, many people find they're less tempted by random, impulse purchases that don't deliver lasting satisfaction. The morning ritual serves as a focused channel for enjoying luxury in a controlled, intentional way. The transformation of ordinary products into extraordinary experiences through ritual explains why a simple cup of coffee can feel more luxurious than products costing 10 times as much. It's not the coffee itself creating that wealth feeling. It's the intentional practice surrounding it, the mindfulness brought to the experience, and the consistency that allows anticipation to amplify enjoyment. So if you're looking to increase your daily sense of abundance without increasing your spending, your morning ritual offers the perfect opportunity. What small upgrade could transform those first 15 minutes of your day? Perhaps it's a better quality tea, a beautiful cup, or simply creating 5 minutes of undistracted time to fully enjoy what you already have. Freedom indicators: filling your gas tank without checking the price. Moving beyond your morning routine, have you ever noticed how some people confidently fill their gas tank without even glancing at the price, while others meticulously stop at exactly $20? This seemingly mundane behavior at the gas station actually reveals something profound about wealth psychology that has nothing to do with your actual bank balance. When we asked our community about purchases that instantly create feelings of wealth, one answer dominated the responses. It wasn't luxury watches or designer clothes. It was simply filling up their gas tank completely without checking the price. This everyday action creates an immediate sense of financial abundance that expensive purchases often can't match. Think about it. There's something uniquely liberating about hitting the fill button and walking away, knowing your tank will be full regardless of whether gas is $3.50 or $4.15 per gallon. It eliminates that mental calculation most of us unconsciously perform dozens of times daily. Can I afford this right now? That momentary freedom from financial anxiety is what makes this simple purchase feel so emotionally powerful. Financial anxiety affects our decision-making in ways we often don't recognize. Harvard Business School research found that 1 in 4 Americans faced financial scarcity in 2019, a situation likely worsened by recent inflation and economic challenges. This widespread experience of scarcity shapes how we approach even small purchases, like filling our gas tanks. What's fascinating is that these anxiety-reducing purchases aren't just about convenience. They're psychological freedom indicators. They signal to yourself first and foremost that you have enough, that you're not operating from a position of lack or constant restraint. And that internal messaging is incredibly powerful. Our community survey revealed that a staggering 78% of respondents associated true financial freedom not with mansions or luxury cars, but with being able to fill their gas tank without checking the price. This small action creates an outsized feeling of wealth because it directly contradicts the scarcity mindset many of us unconsciously carry. This phenomenon extends beyond the gas station. Other common freedom indicators include ordering appetizers at restaurants without calculating if they fit your budget, buying the premium version of an everyday item without justifying the extra cost, or taking a rideshare without first checking if public transit would be cheaper. These small decisions all share a common thread. They eliminate the constant mental math that accompanies financial anxiety. Psychologists have a term for this confidence in your ability to handle financial needs without constant worry. They call it financial self-efficacy. This self-efficacy is crucial for overall happiness and well-being, allowing you to make spending decisions aligned with your values rather than driven by persistent anxiety. What makes these freedom indicators so emotionally potent is how they contrast with past experiences of restriction. If you've ever had to count out exact change for gas, carefully calculate grocery totals while shopping, or felt anxious about an unexpected $50 expense, then the absence of that anxiety creates a powerful emotional response. The contrast between scarcity and abundance mindsets plays a significant role here. Those with a scarcity mindset feel compelled to monitor every dollar, creating constant background stress. Those who've developed an abundance mindset, regardless of their actual financial situation, allow themselves small freedoms that reinforce feelings of security rather than perpetuating anxiety. What's particularly interesting about these freedom indicators is how they vary based on personal financial history and values. Someone who grew up experiencing food insecurity might find that buying name-brand groceries without checking prices creates more powerful feelings of wealth than someone who struggles with transportation costs and finds freedom in rideshare services. That's why identifying your own personal freedom indicators is so important. They're not universal. They're shaped by your specific financial journey and the particular anxieties you've carried. For some, it's filling the gas tank. For others, it's buying concert tickets without checking which seat is cheapest, or treating a friend to coffee without mentally adjusting their budget afterward. These small purchases punch far above their weight class emotionally, because they eliminate specific money worries that have been part of your life experience. They create momentary breaks from financial anxiety that can be more meaningful than purchases costing hundreds more. The beauty of these freedom indicators is that they're relatively affordable. Filling your gas tank completely might cost just $10 to $20 more than your usual partial fill. Ordering an appetizer might add $12 to your meal. Taking a rideshare instead of spending 40 minutes on public transit might cost an extra $15. These small indulgences create disproportionate feelings of wealth without significantly impacting your financial goals. This isn't about encouraging irresponsible spending, quite the opposite. By identifying which small purchases create the greatest psychological return for you personally, you can strategically incorporate them into your budget while cutting back in areas that don't provide the same emotional value. This creates a more sustainable approach to personal finance that acknowledges the emotional component of our relationship with money. The next time you're at the gas pump, pay attention to your behavior. Do you automatically stop at a specific dollar amount? Do you constantly check the rising total? Or can you hit fill and walk away? Your answer might reveal more about your wealth mindset than you realize, and might point toward a simple way to create more feelings of financial freedom in your daily life. Everyday upgrades. When good enough becomes great. The freedom to fill your gas tank without checking the price reveals one type of wealth mindset. But have you noticed how the things you interact with every day might be sending even stronger signals about your financial psychology? There's fascinating research showing that small quality upgrades in items you use daily can create an outsized feeling of abundance and luxury, all without breaking the bank. Let's talk about the power of everyday upgrades. You know that feeling when you stay at a nice hotel and wrap yourself in a plush towel? What if you could have that experience every single morning in your own bathroom? This is where the psychology of quality upgrades comes into play. Those small improvements to everyday items that deliver emotional returns far beyond their modest price tags. When I asked our community about purchases that make them feel disproportionately wealthy, an interesting pattern emerged. People weren't talking about designer clothes or luxury cars, they were mentioning things like soft towels, sharp kitchen knives, and quality bedsheets. These aren't flashy status symbols, but rather quality improvements to items they interact with physically every single day. Take something as simple as bathroom towels. Many viewers shared that upgrading from scratchy $5 bargain bin towels to mid-range options costing $15 to $20 completely transformed their daily routine. Suddenly, that morning shower isn't just functional. It's a mini luxury experience that starts the day with a feeling of abundance. One viewer put it perfectly. My $17 towel makes me feel like I'm at a spa every morning, and I use it 365 days a year. That's less than 5 cents per use for a major happiness boost. The same principle applies in the kitchen. A single quality chef's knife costing $30 to $50 can make cooking feel less like a chore and more like an enjoyable activity. When you don't have to struggle with dull, flimsy tools, meal preparation becomes a pleasure rather than a frustration. This transformation, from dreaded task to enjoyable experience, creates a powerful psychological return on investment. But here's the critical question. How do you know which upgrades are actually worth it, and which are just clever marketing designed to separate you from your money? The research offers some clear guidance here. The key lies in identifying items that meet 3 critical criteria. First, you use them frequently, ideally daily or multiple times per week. Second, they involve significant physical or tactile interaction, things you touch, hold, or feel against your skin. And third, there's a noticeable quality difference between basic and better options that you can actually experience. Bed sheets are another perfect example. We spend roughly a third of our lives sleeping, and the difference between scratchy, pilling sheets and smooth, comfortable ones is something you'll notice every single night. An upgrade from $25 to $60 sheets might seem expensive until you calculate the cost per use. Just pennies for each night of better sleep and that luxurious feeling as you slide into bed. What's particularly interesting is the concept of experienced utility that researchers have identified. This refers to the actual satisfaction we derive from using a product over time, which is often quite different from the decision utility. The satisfaction we anticipate at the purchase moment. With quality everyday items, the experienced utility frequently exceeds our expectations, delivering ongoing pleasure that compounds with each use. This helps explain why 70% of global luxury consumers now prioritize quality craftsmanship over flashy branding. There's been a significant shift toward valuing how products perform and feel rather than how obviously expensive they appear to others. This isn't about impressing people. It's about creating genuine satisfaction in your daily life. The tactile experience matters enormously here. Items that you physically touch create emotional connections that digital or visual products simply can't match. That's why upgrading things like kitchen utensils, writing instruments, or even socks tends to deliver such strong psychological returns. These items create sensory experiences that register deeply in our brains. Some viewers have shared fascinating examples. I bought a $30 chef's knife after years of using dollar store knives, and it literally changed my relationship with cooking. Another mentioned, spending $25 on good wool socks instead of buying 6 packs of cheap cotton ones was a game changer for my daily comfort. What's particularly smart about these upgrades is that they often save money in the long run. Quality items typically last substantially longer than their cheaper counterparts. That $5 towel might feel like sandpaper after 3 washes and need replacement within months, while the $17 version maintains its softness for years. You're not just buying a better experience. You're often making a more economical choice when you consider cost per use. This creates a kind of virtuous cycle. The item feels luxurious, which makes you take better care of it, which helps it last longer, which makes the initial investment even more worthwhile. And all the while, you're enjoying that little boost of abundance feelings every time you use it. The psychological impact extends beyond just the moment of use. Having quality items around you creates what psychologists call environmental cues that subtly influence your mindset throughout the day. When your surroundings contain things that feel premium and well-made, it reinforces a sense of personal standards and care that can positively affect other areas of your life. So how do you start implementing this strategy without blowing your budget? Begin by identifying your high-touch items, the things you interact with most frequently in a tactile way. Then research the sweet spot where quality meaningfully improves, but before you hit the point of diminishing returns. This is rarely the cheapest option, but it's also rarely the most expensive. It's that middle zone where thoughtful craftsmanship matters more than brand names. Think of it as strategic upgrading rather than universal upgrading. You don't need to improve everything at once. Start with one category that would bring you daily joy. Maybe kitchen tools if you cook frequently, or bedding if sleep is important to you, or perhaps writing instruments if you journal or take notes regularly. Remember, The goal isn't to have the most expensive version of everything. It's to identify where quality improvements will actually enhance your daily experience in meaningful ways. This isn't mindless consumption. Time-saving purchases, buying back your hours. While mindful upgrading creates daily joy through physical objects, what if the most powerful feeling of abundance comes from something invisible? Harvard researchers discovered a type of purchase that boosts happiness more consistently than any material good, and it costs less than you might think. Time isn't just money, it's actually worth far more. Think about it. You can always earn more money, but you can never get back lost time. This reality is why time-saving purchases create such a profound feeling of wealth. When you free yourself from life's tedious tasks, you're essentially buying the ultimate luxury, freedom itself. Here's where things get interesting. According to recent Harvard Business School research, spending money to save time actually makes people happier than spending that same amount on material possessions. This finding challenges our typical approach to budgeting, where we often prioritize things over time. But there's a psychological barrier many of us face. When I surveyed our community about their spending habits, a surprising number admitted they feel guilty paying for services they could technically do themselves. It's that little voice saying, "I should just wash my own car," or "I could meal prep if I just got more organized." This self-imposed pressure to do everything yourself can actually harm your quality of life. Many respondents described feeling overwhelmed by their to-do lists while simultaneously resisting spending on help, creating a perfect recipe for burnout. The beauty of time-saving purchases is their incredible range. You don't need to hire a full-time assistant to experience this wealth effect. It can be as simple as spending an extra $2 to $3 on pre-chopped vegetables that save you 10 minutes of prep work. Or maybe it's the $10 to $15 per meal for a subscription service that eliminates grocery shopping, meal planning, and cooking on busy weeknights. For larger investments, consider the joy many people report from their robot vacuums. At $200 to $300, they're not cheap, but the freedom from daily floor maintenance creates an outsized feeling of luxury. As one viewer put it, "My robot vacuum might be the best money I've ever spent. I no longer walk in the door and immediately see chores waiting for me." What's particularly fascinating about these time-saving purchases is that their emotional impact isn't directly connected to the actual minutes saved. It's much more personal than that. The real value comes from eliminating specific tasks that you personally find draining, frustrating, or anxiety-producing. Take grocery shopping as an example. For some people, wandering the aisles is a relaxing break from screen time and a chance to plan creative meals. For others, it's a hellish experience of fluorescent lights, decision fatigue, and heavy bags. This explains why grocery delivery feels like an unnecessary splurge to one person, but an essential mental health service to another. This personalized nature of time-saving value means you need to be strategic about where you invest. The key question isn't which service saves the most time, but rather, which task do I personally dread the most? That's where you'll get the biggest emotional return on your investment. Consider laundry services. If you find sorting and folding clothes meditative, outsourcing it might actually decrease your happiness. But if you've had clean clothes sitting in the basket for 3 days because you can't face folding them, that $25 wash and fold service might feel like the height of luxury. The psychological power of these purchases extends beyond just eliminating annoying tasks. They also reduce what researchers call cognitive load, the mental energy spent planning, remembering, and worrying about undone chores. This is why meal subscription services often create happiness disproportionate to the actual cooking time saved. They eliminate the mental load of meal planning and grocery lists. Many people also report that time-saving purchases reduce relationship tension. When tasks that caused arguments, like whose turn it is to clean the bathroom, are outsourced, that emotional energy can be redirected toward more meaningful connection. As one community member shared, "The house cleaner who comes twice a month has saved my marriage. That $100 is the best relationship investment we've ever made." Perhaps most interestingly, spending on time-saving services often creates a virtuous cycle. When you reclaim hours from mundane tasks, you can invest that time in activities that truly build wealth, like developing new skills, nurturing important relationships, or pursuing side hustles that generate additional income. This explains why some of the busiest and highest-earning professionals are often the most willing to pay for time-saving services. It's not because they're lazy or wasteful. It's because they understand the opportunity cost of their time. They recognize that an hour spent on low-value tasks is an hour not spent on high-value activities. The wealth feeling these purchases create also comes from the powerful message you send yourself. My time is valuable. Each time you choose to outsource a dreaded task, you're essentially saying, I deserve to spend my limited time on this planet doing things that matter to me. That's a profound statement of self-worth that creates ripple effects throughout your financial psychology. So which time-saving purchase gives you the biggest wealth feeling per dollar? It's not universal, it's personal. For a parent with young children, it might be the $20 babysitter who provides a quiet hour alone. For someone who hates cleaning, it's the robot vacuum. For the busy professional, it might be the meal delivery service that eliminates daily cooking. The common thread is that these purchases eliminate your specific pain points, creating pockets of freedom in your life that feel priceless. They allow you to reclaim not just time, but mental and emotional energy that can be directed toward what truly matters to you. The generosity effect. Why treating others feels like wealth. Let's flip the script on what really makes us feel wealthy. While having more time feels like freedom, there's another type of purchase that creates an even more profound sense of abundance: spending money on others. Imagine this. The simple act of treating a friend to coffee might actually make you feel richer than buying something expensive for yourself. When we're trying to budget or feeling the financial pinch, generosity is typically the first thing we cross off our list. It seems logical, right? Why spend on others when money is tight? But here's the counterintuitive truth. By eliminating these small acts of generosity, we're actually cutting out one of our most powerful sources of feeling financially abundant. Your brain literally lights up differently when you spend on others. Those researchers at the University of British Columbia discovered something fascinating when they looked at brain scans. The reward centers in your brain activate more intensely when you spend money on someone else compared to when you treat yourself. This isn't just feel-good speculation. It's neurological evidence that giving creates a bigger happiness hit than self-spending. This biological response creates what some call a helper's high, an actual physiological reaction that combines with something equally powerful: the social signal you send when you can provide for others. Think about it. When you pick up the check at lunch, you're not just paying for food, you're demonstrating that you have enough resources to share. That's a powerful statement about your financial position, both to others and to yourself. Our community really confirmed this effect. When we surveyed them about what purchases make them feel wealthy, a whopping 82% said that treating a friend to coffee or lunch gave them that feeling of abundance, regardless of how their bank account was actually doing. It wasn't about the amount spent, but the act of being able to spend freely on someone else. Here's where it gets really interesting. The recipient doesn't even need to know how much you spent for you to experience this wealth feeling. That $4 latte you bought for a colleague, they might not think twice about the cost, but for you, the awareness that you can give without calculating or hesitating is what creates that sensation of abundance. This explains why small gestures like bringing donuts to a morning meeting or sending a friend a $5 digital gift card can deliver such massive emotional returns. I spoke with one viewer, Melissa, who told me, I keep a stash of $5 gift cards to local coffee shops in my desk. Whenever a coworker has a rough day or celebrates something special, I can immediately hand them a little treat. Those cards cost me just $5 each, but the ability to spontaneously give something meaningful makes me feel like a millionaire every single time. Another viewer shared how he keeps a generosity fund of just $40 per month in his budget specifically for unexpected giving opportunities. Having that money already allocated for treating others means I never have to think twice about picking up someone's tab or buying a small gift. That freedom to give without hesitation feels more luxurious than anything I could buy myself with that same $40. What's happening psychologically is pretty remarkable. When you spend on yourself, you're getting just one benefit: the value of whatever you purchased. But when you spend on others, you're getting a triple benefit: the joy of giving, the social connection it creates, and the internal signal that you have more than enough. That's why treating someone to a $15 lunch can genuinely feel more abundant than spending $100 on yourself. These small acts of generosity work especially well as wealth triggers because they combine two things: money alone can't buy meaningful social connections and the sense of virtue that comes from helping others. Research consistently shows these are two of the most significant contributors to overall well-being. Want to test this effect yourself? Start small. Next time you're in line for coffee, pay for the person behind you. Or send a friend who's having a tough week a small care package. The cost might be minimal, but the abundance feeling it creates can last for days. What's particularly powerful about this strategy is how accessible it is regardless of your financial situation. Unlike other wealth signals that require significant resources, even small acts of generosity create this effect. A $3 coffee for a friend, a $5 surprise gift card, or even baking cookies for your neighbors. These modest expenditures deliver outsized emotional returns. The key to maximizing this effect is spontaneity. When generosity feels free and unplanned rather than obligatory, the wealth sensation increases dramatically. Keep a small treat others, fund in your budget specifically for these unplanned moments of giving. Having this money already allocated means you can act on generous impulses without hesitation, further enhancing that feeling of abundance. For those worried about the financial impact, consider that these small acts of generosity often cost less than many self-directed luxury purchases while delivering greater satisfaction. A $15 lunch for a friend might provide more lasting happiness than a $50 item for yourself that quickly falls victim to hedonic adaptation. This generosity effect also has a fascinating spillover benefit. It tends to make you more mindful of all your spending. When you experience firsthand how a $5 expenditure on someone else can create significant happiness, you naturally become more discerning about whether that $50 purchase for yourself will deliver proportional joy. One community member described it perfectly. Treating my friend to lunch made me realize I get more happiness from spending $20 on someone else than I do from spending $100 on another gadget that just ends up in a drawer. It's completely changed how I evaluate purchases. The bottom line is that generosity creates a unique form of wealth feeling because it taps into something deeper than material possession. It connects to our fundamental needs for social bonding and purpose, creating a form of richness that transcends your bank balance. Personal sanctuary purchases, creating your bubble. After sharing with others, there's another powerful wealth trigger hiding in plain sight: the ability to create your own sanctuary anywhere. In our hyper-connected world, the true luxury isn't always about what you can acquire, but what you can block out. Think about it. When was the last time you felt truly undisturbed? For most of us, that peaceful moment is increasingly rare. Our attention is constantly pulled in multiple directions by notifications, noise, and the endless demands of modern life. This is exactly why certain purchases that create boundaries have become the new status symbols of our age. But here's the interesting part. These items don't need to cost a fortune to deliver that luxurious feeling of escape. In fact, the most effective ones typically cost under $100, a small price to pay for creating your own pocket of tranquility wherever you go. Our community survey revealed a clear winner in this category. Noise-canceling headphones topped the list, with a whopping 67% of respondents reporting they create an immediate feeling of luxury even when surrounded by chaos. It makes perfect sense when you think about it. Slip them on in a crowded airport, busy coffee shop, or open office floor plan, and suddenly you're in your own world. The constant background chatter, the keyboard clicks, the espresso machine hisses, all gone with the press of a button. What makes this purchase so powerful isn't just the silence it creates, but the boundary it establishes. When you put on those headphones, you're sending a clear signal to others. I'm not available right now. In a world where we're expected to be constantly accessible, that small act of reclaiming your attention feels remarkably powerful. But noise-canceling headphones aren't the only sanctuary creators making waves. Essential oil diffusers have become increasingly popular for their ability to transform any space through scent. A small portable diffuser costs around $25 to $30 and allows you to instantly change the sensory experience of a hotel room, office, or car. The same goes for weighted blankets, typically $50 to $70, which provide what therapists call deep pressure stimulation. Essentially, the feeling of being gently hugged, which reduces anxiety and promotes relaxation. Other favorites include specialty teas that create a ritual of calm throughout the day, and high-quality bath products that transform an ordinary bathroom into a spa-like retreat. What all these items share is their ability to create an immersive experience that temporarily disconnects you from stress. The psychological mechanism behind why these sanctuary purchases work so effectively is fascinating. Psychologists refer to it as sensory gating, your brain's ability to filter out unwanted stimuli. In prehistoric times, this helped our ancestors focus on important signals like approaching predators while tuning out background noise like rustling leaves. Today, our brains are bombarded with stimuli that our sensory gating mechanisms weren't designed to handle. This is why products that help us control our sensory environment feel so valuable. They're not just luxuries. They're tools that help our overwhelmed brains function more effectively in a world of constant stimulation. When you can filter what enters your sensory field, whether through sound, smell, touch, or taste, you regain a sense of control that feels incredibly empowering. What's particularly interesting about these sanctuary purchases is that they're becoming increasingly portable. Unlike traditional luxury items that might be tied to a specific location, like a high-end bathtub or expensive sound system, many of these newer sanctuary creators are designed to travel with you. This reflects a fundamental shift in how we think about luxury, from fixed experiences to portable ones that adapt to our increasingly mobile lifestyles. Take those noise-canceling headphones again. 20 years ago, creating a quiet environment might have required a dedicated room with soundproofing. Today, you can achieve the same effect anywhere for under $100. The same goes for portable essential oil diffusers, travel tea sets, or compact weighted wraps that deliver the benefits of a full blanket in a more portable form. This trend toward portable sanctuary experiences is being driven by our growing need for stress relief and mental well-being, particularly in public environments where we have limited control. As one community member put it, "My noise-canceling headphones aren't just about blocking sound. They're my portable office walls in a world where actual walls are increasingly rare." The market for these boundary-creating products continues to grow precisely because they address a fundamental need that's only becoming more acute in our overstimulated world. They allow us to create micro-environments of calm without requiring major lifestyle changes or massive expenditures. What's most valuable about these sanctuary purchases is that they don't just change your external environment. They shift your internal state as well. When you engage multiple senses simultaneously, you create what neuroscientists call a full sensory override that can actually interrupt stress cycles and shift your nervous system from fight or flight to rest and digest mode. For example, combining the physical comfort of a weighted blanket with the auditory boundary of noise-canceling headphones and the olfactory experience of a favorite essential oil creates a multi-layered sensory experience that's far more effective at creating calm than any single approach alone. This multi-sensory engagement explains why these relatively affordable items can feel more luxurious than much more expensive purchases. A $75 combination of headphones, a quality candle, and a specialty tea can create a more immersive sanctuary experience than a $500 purchase that engages only one sense or serves a purely functional purpose. So how do you identify which sanctuary purchases will actually deliver that feeling of premium escape rather than just adding to the clutter of unused self-care products? The key is to focus on items that address your personal sensitivity points. Are you most disturbed by noise, visual clutter, uncomfortable physical sensations? The most effective sanctuary purchases are those that address your specific sources of overstimulation. It's also worth considering the portability factor. The most valuable sanctuary creators are those that work in multiple environments, allowing you to maintain your boundaries whether you're at home, traveling, or at work. This versatility maximizes identity investments, small purchases that signal who you are. Beyond creating personal sanctuaries, there's an even more fascinating way your small purchases affect your psychology. Identity investments don't just give you things, they literally shape who you are and how others perceive you. That notebook on your desk? It's not just for writing. It's telling a story about you before you've written a single word. Let's be honest, we're all playing a character in our own lives to some extent. The items we choose to surround ourselves with aren't random. They're carefully curated extensions of our personality. And here's where it gets interesting. Sometimes the smallest purchases can make the biggest statement about who we are or aspire to be. Think about the last time you bought something that just felt right, something that made you think, "This is so me." That feeling isn't accidental. Psychologists have discovered what they call identity congruence, the powerful sense of well-being we experience when our purchases align with our self-image. When you buy something that resonates with how you see yourself or want to see yourself, it creates a harmony between your actions and identity that feels surprisingly good. Here's where the magic happens. These identity-affirming purchases often cost way less than you'd expect. The aspiring writer doesn't need a $2,000 writing retreat to feel legitimate. A $20 quality notebook signals the same commitment to the craft. The home chef doesn't need a professional kitchen. Those $15 specialty ingredients communicate the same passion for cooking. The health enthusiast's sleek water bottle costs a fraction of a gym membership, but broadcasts the same values. What makes these purchases so emotionally valuable is that they serve as constant physical reminders of your chosen identity. Every time you use them, they reinforce who you are. That notebook doesn't just sit there, it whispers you're a writer each time you see it. The specialty cooking ingredient doesn't just flavor your meal, it says you're someone who cares about culinary excellence. These aren't just items, they're identity anchors that ground you in your aspirations. But not all identity purchases deliver the same psychological return. In our endless options world, how do you distinguish between identity investments that genuinely enhance your self-perception versus those that just create clutter and buyer's remorse? The key difference is whether the item activates your identity through use rather than mere ownership. A cookbook that sits unopened on your shelf might technically signal, "I'm a foodie," but it doesn't reinforce that identity through regular interaction. Contrast that with a quality chef's knife you use daily. It's actively building your culinary identity with each slice and dice. This explains why certain brands have developed almost cult-like followings. When you see someone with Apple AirPods, a Hydro Flask water bottle, or carrying a particular brand of notebook, you're witnessing identity investment in action. These products have transcended their functional value to become visual shorthand for specific personality traits and values. They're social signals that communicate volumes about a person before they've spoken a word. What's particularly interesting about these identity investments is that they often become natural conversation starters. That unique pen you carry or the distinctive accessory on your bag creates opportunities for connection with like-minded people. Oh, is that a traveler's notebook? I love those. Just like that, your small purchase has created a social opening that reinforces your identity through community recognition. In our digital age, these identity markers have taken on even greater significance. With personal branding becoming increasingly important, luxury items help consumers differentiate themselves and express their identity in both physical and virtual spaces. Your carefully chosen items appear in your social media posts, adding visual depth to the story you're telling about yourself online. The rise of digital status symbols illustrates this perfectly. Take AirPods, for example. These wireless earbuds have become more than just a way to listen to music. They're signals of belonging and status within digital communities. They reflect broader trends in how we use purchases to construct and communicate our identities in an increasingly connected world. Luxury fashion brands understand this psychology intimately. They don't just sell products, they sell stories about who you could be. The right watch, bag, or even a particular style of sunglasses becomes a powerful medium for self-expression. Each purchase allows individuals to communicate their personal style, values, and social positioning without saying a word. But here's the liberating truth. You don't need to spend luxury prices to get these identity benefits. The most effective identity. Purchases often fly under the radar of conspicuous consumption. They're not about flashing logos or price tags. They're about the personal meaning they hold for you. Consider how a modest $25 camera accessory might make an amateur photographer feel like a real photographer. Or how a $30 set of professional-grade colored pencils validates an artist's creative pursuits. These purchases work because they bridge the gap between aspiration and reality, making your desired identity feel more attainable and authentic. The psychological impact goes beyond individual self-perception to shape social dynamics. When your purchases reflect your values and aspirations, they create a sense of belonging within specific social groups. The environmental activist with their reusable products, the tech enthusiast with their latest gadgets, the fitness devotee with their specialized gear. These identity-based consumption patterns help define social tribes. So which purchases actually work to signal that you're financially comfortable? Surprisingly, it's rarely the expensive, showy items. Instead, it's the subtle quality upgrades that indicate discernment rather than disposable income. The person who invests in a handcrafted leather wallet that will last decades signals different values than someone who buys a flashy designer version that will be replaced next season. The $10 wealth trigger. What's your personal $1 million purchase? Moving beyond subtle quality upgrades, there's something deeply personal that shapes our relationship with money. Have you ever noticed how a purchase that costs less than your lunch can make you feel wealthier than something costing 10 times as much? I call this phenomenon your wealth trigger. That magical purchase hitting your psychological sweet spot and creating an outsized feeling of abundance regardless of its price tag. Remember those fresh flowers I mentioned earlier? That $12 bouquet sitting on my desk completely transforms my workspace and mood. Every time I glance up and see those vibrant colors, I experience a little burst of joy that reminds me I can afford to surround myself with beauty. That's my personal wealth trigger, but yours might be entirely different. What makes these wealth triggers so powerful is that they combine multiple psychological elements we've explored throughout this video. The most potent triggers aren't just one-dimensional purchases. They blend aspects of ritual, identity, personal sanctuary, and freedom all in one affordable package. They're like emotional Swiss Army knives that activate several pleasure centers simultaneously. The fascinating part? Your personal wealth trigger might cost just $5 or $10, yet deliver a feeling of abundance that far exceeds its price tag. This disconnect between cost and emotional return is what makes identifying your personal triggers so valuable. While I find tremendous joy in fresh flowers, you might discover that premium hot chocolate, artisanal bread, or a monthly magazine subscription hits that same emotional sweet spot for you. Our community shares so many wonderful examples. One member described how a pint of small batch ice cream, costing just $8, creates a more profound sense of luxury than dining at expensive restaurants. Another mentioned their weekend ritual of buying freshly baked sourdough bread from a local bakery. That $6 loaf transforms ordinary meals into special occasions and makes their entire kitchen smell amazing. These wealth triggers share important characteristics. First, they're typically modest upgrades from basic versions. Not the cheapest option, but far from the most expensive. Second, they engage your senses directly and intensely. The aroma of quality coffee, the feel of premium paper, or the visual impact of fresh flowers. Finally, they're usually consumed mindfully rather than automatically, with full attention to the experience. What's particularly valuable about identifying your personal wealth triggers is the opportunity to strategically incorporate them into your life. Unlike major purchases that quickly lose their emotional impact through hedonic adaptation, these small pleasures often maintain their emotional potency over time. By deliberately including them in your routine, you can create consistent moments of abundance without breaking your budget. This approach creates what financial psychology experts refer to as money harmony. That sweet spot where your spending aligns perfectly with your personal values. When you discover this alignment, purchases bring genuine satisfaction rather than guilt or emptiness. You're not spending to impress others or fill an emotional void. You're intentionally choosing items that enhance your subjective experience of life. Let me give you a concrete example. Sarah, a viewer from Chicago, shared how she identifies potential wealth triggers. I ask myself, would I still buy this if no one else ever saw it? If the answer is yes, I know it's about my own enjoyment rather than impressing others. This simple test helped her recognize that her $7 specialty tea was a genuine wealth trigger, while her designer handbag purchases were more about external validation. The psychological impact of these triggers goes beyond momentary pleasure. When properly identified and incorporated into your life, they can actually transform your entire relationship with money. Instead of viewing financial wellness as a distant goal requiring strict deprivation in the present, you learn to create accessible moments of abundance throughout your journey. This explains why some purchases feel extravagant regardless of their actual cost. They connect directly to your personal definition of the good life. For some, that might mean curling up with a library book and premium hot chocolate. For others, it could be wearing especially comfortable socks while working from home, or using a fountain pen with smooth-flowing ink for everyday writing. The key principle here is mindfulness about what genuinely brings you joy. Too often, we autopilot through purchasing decisions, either falling into habitual spending patterns or blindly following marketing suggestions about what should make us happy. Identifying your wealth triggers requires paying attention to your emotional responses and noticing which small purchases create that distinctive feeling of abundance that lasts long after the transaction. Try this experiment. Over the next week, notice which small purchases under $20 create a disproportionate feeling of wealth and abundance for you. Pay attention to how long that feeling lasts. Is it gone as soon as the novelty wears off, or does it provide ongoing satisfaction with each use? The purchases that consistently deliver emotional returns are your personal wealth triggers. Once identified, consider building these triggers systematically into your financial plan. Perhaps it's setting aside $10 a week for fresh flowers, or budgeting for that special coffee bean delivery that makes your mornings feel luxurious. By consciously allocating resources to these high-return purchases, you're essentially investing in your emotional well-being while maintaining financial responsibility. What's remarkable about this approach is how it can transform even financially challenging periods. During times when major purchases or experiences might be out of reach, these small wealth triggers become emotional anchors, providing accessible moments of abundance that keep your financial mindset positive and forward-looking. Creating your wealth-feeling strategy, the 5% rule. These emotional anchors we've been exploring aren't just random indulgences. They're essential components of a sustainable financial strategy. But here's the million-dollar question. How much should you actually budget for these wealth triggers without derailing your financial goals? The answer lies in what financial experts call the 5% rule. Traditional budgeting methods have trained us to view any non-essential spending as wasteful or irresponsible. You know the approach: cut all luxuries, pinch every penny, and maximize savings at all costs. But this restrictive mindset often backfires spectacularly. When we constantly deprive ourselves of small pleasures, we're actually setting ourselves up for financial rebellion. Those moments when we throw the budget out the window and splurge impulsively out of sheer frustration. The 5% rule offers a refreshing alternative that acknowledges our emotional needs while maintaining financial discipline. It suggests carving out approximately 5% of your discretionary income specifically for these high emotional return purchases we've been discussing. This creates what financial psychologists sometimes call a joy allowance, a dedicated portion of your budget that's pre-approved for items that deliver disproportionate happiness. This approach is revolutionary because it transforms what would otherwise be guilty pleasures into intentional, strategic investments in your emotional well-being. When these purchases are planned rather than impulsive, the guilt evaporates, and you can fully enjoy the experience knowing it aligns with your overall financial plan. Let me break down how to implement this in practical terms. First, you'll need to determine your discretionary income. That's the money remaining after essential expenses like housing, utilities, food, and savings goals. For example, if you have $500 of discretionary income monthly, your wealth trigger budget would be around $25. This might not sound like much, but remember, we're talking about purchases that deliver outsized emotional returns for minimal financial investment. The next step is crucial. Become a detective of your own happiness. Start documenting small purchases that consistently brighten your day, paying special attention to those under $20 that continue to deliver satisfaction days after buying them. This conscious tracking reveals patterns you might never have noticed otherwise. Jessica, one of our community members, discovered through this exercise that her weekly farmer's market flowers, $8, consistently boosted her mood all week, while her daily fancy coffee shop visit, $5, provided only a fleeting pleasure that faded quickly. This insight allowed her to reallocate her spending toward the higher return purchase, maximizing her emotional ROI. The magic happens when you create a dedicated category in your budget specifically for these wealth triggers. Unlike general entertainment or shopping categories that might be the first to get cut during tight months, this category gets special protection because you recognize its psychological importance. Think of it as your financial mental health fund. What's fascinating about this approach is how it completely transforms your relationship with these purchases. When that $4 specialty coffee or $12 bouquet of flowers becomes an intentional part of your financial plan rather than an impulsive splurge, you eliminate the mental gymnastics of justification and self-criticism that often accompany these small indulgences. The psychological benefit of this separation is profound. By creating a specific mental account for wealth trigger spending, you're applying the concept of mental accounting in a positive way. Behavioral economists have long observed that people naturally separate money into different mental buckets: And while this can sometimes lead to irrational decisions, it can also be leveraged intentionally to create healthier financial habits. Financial advisors who once focused exclusively on mathematical optimization are increasingly recognizing the importance of emotional sustainability in financial planning. A budget that looks perfect on paper but makes you miserable in practice isn't sustainable. And advisors are now incorporating emotional well-being factors into their recommendations. As certified financial planner Manisha Thaker explains in her work on financial wellness, the most mathematically optimal financial plan is utterly worthless if a client can't stick with it. This recognition has led to more nuanced approaches to budgeting that balance numerical goals with psychological needs. Implementation of the 5% rule requires some personalization. For those with very tight budgets, even 3% might be appropriate, while others might comfortably allocate 7 to 8% without impacting their broader financial goals. The exact percentage matters less than the principle of deliberate allocation. What's remarkable about this approach is how it completely shifts your mindset. Instead of seeing these small luxuries as financial failures or weaknesses to overcome, you recognize them as strategic investments in your emotional resilience. This perspective shift allows you to enjoy these purchases fully, without the counterproductive guilt that often diminishes their pleasure. For maximum effectiveness, consider keeping a wealth trigger journal for a month. Document not just what you bought, but how long the positive feelings lasted, the circumstances surrounding the purchase, and whether it was more effective alone or shared with others. This deeper analysis helps refine your understanding of which specific aspects of these purchases create the strongest wealth feelings for you personally. By intentionally directing a small portion of your resources toward these high-return emotional investments, you're essentially creating an emotional emergency fund, accessible moments of abundance that can sustain you through financially challenging periods when larger indulgences might be out of reach. The strategy works because it acknowledges a fundamental truth about human psychology. We need to feel progress and pleasure in the present moment, not just work toward distant future goals. The 5% rule builds this reality into your financial plan rather than fighting against it. Mindful consumption, the secret multiplier. Finding pleasure in the present moment isn't just about what you buy. It's about how you experience it. That morning coffee ritual you've budgeted for might feel like a basic necessity. But what if transforming it into a legitimate luxury experience requires nothing more than putting your phone down and paying attention to what's actually in your cup? I bet you've experienced this before. You treat yourself to something nice, maybe that specialty coffee or premium chocolate you've been eyeing, only to mindlessly consume it while scrolling through social media or rushing between meetings. By the time you've finished, you barely remember the experience you just paid for. In essence, you've thrown away 2/3 of the satisfaction you actually purchased. This is where the concept of mindful consumption comes into play. It's not just some fancy wellness term. It's a practical strategy to maximize the return on your wealth trigger investments without spending an extra penny. And the research backs this up in a major way. When you give your full attention to what you're consuming, you activate entirely different neural pathways compared to distracted consumption. Think about the last time you really savored something. Maybe you closed your eyes to focus on the flavors of a dessert or felt the warmth of that premium coffee mug between your hands. That heightened awareness creates a fuller, richer experience that leaves a more lasting impression on your memory. According to research from Cornell University, people who practice this kind of mindful consumption report experiencing up to 3 times more satisfaction from identical purchases compared to those who consume them while distracted. 3 times. That's essentially tripling your money without spending an extra dime. The most powerful aspect of this approach is that it works for virtually any purchase that has a sensory component. That premium hand soap you splurged on? Take a moment to really smell the fragrance and feel the lather between your fingers instead of automatically washing while thinking about your to-do list. Those slightly upgraded sheets you invested in? Take 10 seconds before falling asleep to actually notice their softness against your skin. What makes sensory experiences like food, drinks, and self-care products particularly responsive to mindful consumption is that their entire value proposition is based on the moment-by-moment experience they provide. Unlike a status symbol that might derive value from others seeing it, these items are meant to be experienced directly by you. When you rush through them or experience them while distracted, you're literally missing what you paid for. So how do you actually implement mindful consumption in a world designed to fragment your attention? Here are some practical approaches that won't require meditation retreats or complicated techniques. First, create a simple ritual around your wealth trigger purchases. This could be as basic as putting your phone in another room while enjoying your morning coffee or turning off notifications during your lunch break. Even just placing your purchase on a nice surface and taking 3 deep breaths before consuming it can reset your attention. Second, engage all relevant senses. If you're drinking that specialty coffee, notice the aroma before taking a sip. Feel the warmth of the mug. Listen to the sound as you stir. This multisensory awareness creates a more immersive experience that counteracts our tendency to operate on autopilot. Third, verbalize or mentally note what you appreciate about the experience. This might feel awkward at first, but simply thinking, "I love how smooth this coffee tastes," or "this blanket feels incredibly soft," helps anchor your attention to the present moment and enhances your appreciation. The most interesting thing about mindful consumption is that it actually changes your relationship with material goods over time. When you start extracting maximum enjoyment from each purchase, you often find yourself naturally gravitating toward fewer, higher quality items rather than constantly seeking the next dopamine hit from new acquisitions. This doesn't mean you need to turn every purchase into a formal meditation session. Even just 30 seconds of focused attention can dramatically alter your experience. Think of it as collecting on the full value of what you've already paid for rather than leaving satisfaction on the table. Let's look at a practical example. Say you've identified a premium bar of chocolate as one of your wealth triggers. At $5, it costs 3 times more than a regular candy bar. If you eat it while watching TV or scrolling through your phone, you might barely notice the difference from a cheaper alternative. But if you take just 2 minutes to focus on the experience, noticing the snap when you break off a piece, allowing it to melt slowly on your tongue, identifying the subtle flavor notes, you've now transformed a simple treat into a legitimate luxury experience. The satisfaction multiplier effect becomes even more powerful when you combine mindful consumption with strategic purchasing of your personal wealth triggers. Imagine identifying the 3 to 5 items that give you the biggest emotional boost, allocating your 5% joy budget toward them, and then consuming each one with full presence and attention. You've now created a financial and psychological framework that maximizes well-being while minimizing expense. This approach is particularly valuable during financially tight periods. When your budget for luxuries shrinks, shifting to mindful consumption allows you to maintain or even increase your enjoyment without increasing spending. It's one of the few true win-wins in personal finance. The most common objection I hear to this approach is, "I don't have time to slow down and savor things." But that reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of both time and value. The goal isn't to spend more time consuming, it's to be fully present during the time you're already spending. Those 3 to 5 minutes you take to drink your morning coffee, they're happening regardless. The only question is whether you'll collect the full satisfaction you've paid for during those minutes. Practicing mindful consumption also tends to have a spillover effect into other areas of life. People who regularly engage in mindful consumption often report greater satisfaction with their possessions generally, less impulse purchasing, and a clearer sense of what truly brings them joy versus what just creates clutter. So the next time you indulge in one of your wealth triggers, whether it's that special coffee, premium ice cream, or luxury hand soap, try this experiment. Eliminate distractions, engage all your senses, and mentally note what you appreciate about the experience. Notice how different it feels from your usual consumption pattern, and how much more satisfaction you derive from the exact same purchase. Here's the truth about feeling wealthy. It's less about what you own and more about how intentionally you savor what you have. As Dr. Robert Coiler notes, incorporating little luxuries into your life is an easy self-hack that prioritizes your well-being and enjoyment. These small indulgences aren't just treats. They're strategic investments in your mental health that reduce stress and foster positivity. What makes this approach so powerful is that it shifts your entire relationship with money. Instead of chasing bigger purchases or higher account balances, you're training yourself to extract maximum joy from minimal spending. Research confirms that mindfully focusing on positive experiences significantly boosts joy, creating a ripple effect through your entire financial life. By practicing gratitude alongside these intentional pleasures, you'll develop what experts call a more fulfilling relationship with money. This isn't just about feeling good. It's about making smarter financial decisions from a place of contentment rather than scarcity. Remember, the real genius of personal finance isn't just